everyone, and welcome to another edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. I, of course, am MrWarrenHayes, welcoming you into my digital abode for the next couple of hours, so that we can all sit around and listen to me talk about pro wrestling. Isn't that great? That's great how all this works out. In this pro wrestling podcast, which I like to call the MrWarrenHayes Show. And we'll be doing that here right now, right here on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes or on your favorite podcast application, wherever you decide to consume the MrWarrenHayes Show. I am appreciative, and this kind of rules. I'm there wherever you decide. We're talking about Apple and Spotify, but you can find me on Podbean or on Overcast or on iHeartRadio Network or on Amazon Music. I'm there. So, I always talk about the same ones because they're, the bigger platforms, but I'm there. Look, you're a smart person. You can figure it out. I know you're a smart person because you're going to listen. You listen to my stuff. If it's your first time here, I would appreciate you coming back. So why don't you subscribe? That'd be great. Or join on your Apple Podcasts or your Spotify's or whatever. I would gladly welcome you as a new listener, a new viewer. It'd be tremendous. Thank you very much for being here. As we usually like to plug here, the MrWarrenHayes Show Discord server is there, and it's hopping. It's not. I don't even know what that means. Link is in the description if you want to come join us. And hey, you know what I did recently, and I put out on the YouTube channel is a compilation of all the reviews of all the wrestling show reviews I've done in April 2024. Basically, coming back from my surgery, I compiled them on nearly 7 hours of back-to-back wrestling reviews, wrestling shows. So if you want to check those out, they're there. You can check out all, and everything is categorized, not categorized, but itemized. You have the chapters is what I'm trying to say, that are all there. So if you want to listen to the chapters, just, a specific show, you can do it, or you can fire it up as background noise, or, allow it to cradle you to sleep at night. It's all great stuff that you can do. It's in the YouTube channel on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes, and I'll put a link here, a card. I think it's up here that they go. I'll do that on the video side of things, not on the audio side of things. But come on over to the YouTube channel and do that. That would be tremendous. So listen, we've got again a show where there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be previewing Forbidden Door 2024. So excited for you to hear my thoughts on that. I'm going to be reviewing CMLL New Japan Fantasticamania Mexico 2024, a show that, spoiler alert, I loved. So we're doing that towards the back end of the show. And we've got some news and notes, a lot of newsy events happening. Let's get right to it then. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. Let's jump right in. We're going to start the show actually tonight on a bit of a tragic note. Today, as we're recording this today on June 25th, 2024, we learned of the passing of Skia Anoa'i, one of half of the Wild Samoans tag team and one of the patriarchs of the Samoan dynasty of the Anoa'i family. He was 79 years old. The news was announced on Tuesday by his nephew Jairus, and of his passing. Sika was the father of 5 children, which of course include WWE star Roman Reigns and former WWE star the late Rosie. Of course, this is probably how a lot of how a lot of wrestlers, how a lot of wrestling fans today know him as, because of the bloodline angle. There was a lot of emphasis and story surrounding the Anoa'i family. But I knew him watching wrestling as I was growing up. He started off training as a wrestler by his brother Afa and Kurt von Steiger, debuting in 1973 at Stampede Wrestling over in Calgary, and he started wrestling with his brother Afa, of course, calling themselves the Wild Samoans. And I remember this gimmick rather vividly because it was such an absolutely compelling television thing to see these two guys who rarely spoke in interviews, right? With their huge afros, the Fu Manchus, the beards, and they wouldn't speak. They'd speak in a primitive, I guess, type language that only their manager could really understand. And the whole thing about the Wild Samoans is that they were wild. They were uncivilized. They'd wrestle barefoot, and they'd do things like they'd pick their nose. They'd bite opponents. They do these things that normal civilized people, let's not say white, but that was essentially the thing, wouldn't do, right? They'd even eat raw fish, and I have vivid memories of just being a young tot little MrWarrenHayes watching this stuff and just being completely stunned at these guys just tearing into like an entire whole dead but raw uncooked fish, just tearing into it. They were such an easy spectacle to get behind, and it worked because look, like I said, they started with Stu Hart over in Calgary, and they were very good workers. And here's the thing: if memory serves me right, they never trained in the dungeon. Like they never went to Stu Hart's dungeon, but but apparently, like they drive Stu around in a van, and while one of them was driving, Stu would be in the back with the other, either Afa or Sika, and he'd be stretching them in the back regardless. Like that's the kind of maniac that Stu was. Their gimmick, their work got would ensure that they'd work all over the place. And I mean, you name a territory at the time, and the Wild Samoans worked there. Big time wrestling, Continental, Gulf Coast, NWA Mid America, the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico, Mid South, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and the WWF, which is probably where people my age were most familiar with, unless you really had I didn't have access to the local TV of Crockett and Georgia Championship Wrestling and so on and so forth. I think even the Samoans worked Crockett. I'm pretty sure. Don't take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure now that I'm thinking about it. But they did have 3 runs in the WWF. The first one was in 1980, where they were managed by Captain Lou Albano, and boy, they were pushed hard. Like they were pushed super hard. They won the tag titles for the first time. They beat Tito Santana and Ivan Putski for the belts. And Sika even challenged Bob Backlund in a singles match for the WWF title. Of course, he didn't win. He did that in March that year. But they left by the end of, or not by the end of the 80s. They left in 1981. I was going a bit overboard there. They left in 1981, only to come back in January 1983, once again with Lou Albano as their manager. They won the WWF Tag Team Championship for the third and final time on March 8, 1983, beating Jules and Chief J Strongbow. This is also the part where Samu would be substituting for Sika, who was injured during the reign here. He would they'd basically be doing Freebird rules pretty much, substituting for Sika over the course of several defenses, and the Wild Samoans lost lost the titles on November 15, 1983 to Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. Of course, Rocky Johnson, we all know how that goes. The father of Dwayne Johnson, who is related to the Anoa'is via their mother. His mother, I should say. In their third run, in his third run, Afa went in as a singles guy. His third run in WWF, I should say, because Sika went in as a singles guy. I'll get it all right. Sika went in as a singles guy in his third run in the WWF because Afa was retired. It's not a total wrestling retirement, of course. He had a winning streak that started to pick up upon his return in August 1986, and that winning streak lasted till November that year, where he lost to Pedro Morales in November. Then he formed a tag team with Kamala, and he even fought Hulk Hogan on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event in 1987, challenging for the WWF title. He left WWE one more time, or the WWF, I should say, one more time, after taking part in a battle royal at WrestleMania 4, which just happens to be his only pay-per-view appearance. He was also a co-founder of the Wild Samoan Training Center with his brother, with Afa, which had two incarnations of him. There was one in Florida, and I think the final one was like in Pennsylvania, like in Allentown, I believe. I think, from all intents and purposes, I think the academy, which trained a ton of people, a lot of names, like I think, Batista is one of the names that comes out here, Billy Kidman. There's a bunch of names that came through the academy, and I think it closed down during the pandemic. So that's long and short of it. He worked some indies afterwards as well, but he was mostly focused on training. And I'm sure over the next couple of days, there's going to be a ton of obituaries and great reads about a much more in-depth look at the career of this man, and with some great stories to go along with. Like, there's already some good stories that I've picked up that I remember over the years. Like, there's a High Spots interview, if I'm not mistaken, where it's with both, right? It's with Afa and Sika, and they shared a lot of stories together. Like, for instance, during their time in Puerto Rico, right? When they'd go out, with the hair and the look and everything, they would stand out wherever they go. So they would continue to be in gimmick, apparently. So they tell this story in this High Spots interview. They tell the story where they'd go to this burger joint and they would order the burgers like in gimmick, and not only like order them, but then how they handled them as well, like taking the burgers and putting them in their pockets, or just eating the burgers while still wrapped, to the dismay of those around them, type of situation. And there's another story where they were pulled over by the cops while riding with Hulk Hogan. They had done some television in Georgia, and they were driving over to Connecticut, and they got pulled over. They were lost, right? And the cop knocks on the door, on the window. It's like, put down your window, and they lower it. And the cop asks them if they're okay, and they're like, we don't speak English. They do the Samoan thing to the officer. And Hogan's like, well, they defer to Hogan, where he's like, no, everything's cool. We're just lost, right? We're trying to find our way. And the cop asked for registration. They pop open the glove compartment, and there's a gun there. So I guess at the time, as they were going up further north, the laws weren't quite the same. So the cop was like, "Oh, there's a gun in there, right? All right, I'm going to ask you gentlemen to step out," kind of thing. And so they got all out, and apparently, I guess it was something about possession. It was the idea of possession. And I don't know exactly. Was it considered a concealed weapon? I don't know exactly. Do you think I'm someone who understands American gun laws? No, I don't. But they ended up going to jail. They went to jail with Hogan, and the judge ended up letting Hulk Hogan walk while these guys, got booked essentially. And the judge flat out, apparently, according to the story, flat out said, "Oh, we're going to let you go because you're a star." Because, you don't want to be caught up in these petty things, but your boys here, the wild men, they're going to have to stay. It's like, well, that works for me, brother. So there you go. That's the thing. That's what we're doing. That's what we're there. There's probably a lot more stories that are going to come forth, but yes, our condolences go out to the entire Anoa'i clan, the entire family. Skia Anoa'i, 79 years old, passed away today, June 25th, 2024. On top of the passing of Skia, on June 21st, we learned that Jamie Kellner had passed away at the age of 77 after a long battle with cancer. According to a spokesperson to the family, Jamie Kellner, of course, was the founding president of Fox Broadcasting. And he was also the chairman and CEO of Turner Broadcasting System, a division of Time Warner, which included TBS, TNT, and Cartoon Network from 2001 to 2003. Now, why are we talking about a TV executive here on a wrestling show? Well, because Jamie Kellner lives somewhat in the minds, very easily in the minds of pro wrestling fans, especially of my age, of my ilk, of my generation. Jamie Kellner is often regarded as the guy who killed WCW by canceling all of its programming on TBS and TNT in March 2001. This led to the canceling of this programming led to WCW's upcoming and theoretical new owners, Brian Bedall's Fusion Media Ventures, pulling out of their deal to buy WCW's assets from Time Warner. Kellner was born in Brooklyn and raised in Long Island. And Kellner first made a name for himself at Orion Entertainment Group, where he spearheaded an effort with Lorne Michaels to buy the rights to original episodes of Saturday Night Live, cut into 30-minute episodes, and then sold off to syndication. And this was a deal that attracted a lot of attention and really helped make him into the man that he eventually became. And we often talk about WCW, but he's also the guy who he's also the guy who canceled Animaniacs, which I think is a bigger crime because Animaniacs was still really good. Anywho, but he, like I said, he's the guy who we generally point our fingers to, right? This is the guy where it's like, nah, this is the guy that killed WCW. And this is a general conception, right? It's a general thought amongst wrestling fans that he's the guy who did it. But and it's been like this for about 20 years. Ever since it passed on WCW, and the idea, the narrative was that Kellner hated and looked down on pro wrestling. And we got this information stemming from a conversation that Dave Meltzer had with Jim Barnett once Kellner took over Turner Broadcasting in March 2001. In the conversation, Meltzer had reached out to Barnett, right? I don't know. He reached out to Barnett to discuss the cancellation of WCW, okay? And Barnett said that, yeah, hey, don't worry, WCW is never going to disappear because Ted Turner loves wrestling too much and he's never going to let it happen, kind of thing. And I think the idea is that Dave told Barnett, no, Ted is gone. You know, he's no longer in charge. And Barnett's like, okay, well, who's in charge? Dave says, Jamie Kellner. And Barnett flat out told Meltzer, well, Jamie Kellner has always hated wrestling. And that's what Dave reported. That's what started constructing the narrative. We had our boogeyman. We had the guy, you know, to blame for taking down the second biggest promotion in the United States. So that and the resulting narrative that the cancellation of WCW programming killed the market for pro wrestling programming in general summed up the entire perception of Kellner in the wrestling world. In a nutshell, the Jamie Kellner hates wrestling narrative was formed. Now, this has gone on for a while, and Kellner has never really spoken about it because, you know, to a degree, Kellner was like, I don't have to justify myself for this. He attracted the ire of wrestling fans for doing this, right? But he was like, he never had to justify himself to wrestling fans. And honestly, you know, why would he have? You know, there's no executives that came out to explain why Firefly was canceled. I'm just saying. But you know, Kellner sat down. He had a talk with Guy Evans. Guy Evans, who penned the novel. Not the novel. It's not a novel. It's an actual book. It's a retelling. The book Nitro: The Incredible Rise and Inevitable Collapse of Ted Turner's WCW. And in the book, Guy Evans, I think got Kellner for the first time on record ever, where Evans actually said it's bullshit. He didn't say it as like that. He was a little classier, but you know, the Jamie Kellner hated wrestling thing was not true. He even said in the book, he being Kellner, quote, I grew up a fan of wrestling and once tried to make a deal with Vince McMahon at a different network. There you go. Was it Fox? Maybe. That would have made a lot of sense. But he himself said, no, I've always been a fan. And in the same chapter where Kellner brings this up, Brian Bedall of Fusion, right, which was the group that also included Eric Bischoff, right, in this to take over that was supposed to buy WCW off of the hands of Turner. He said that Kellner was in a much different position than what we knew. Here's the thing, in the agreement between WCW and Fusion, Evan said in his book that Fusion retained the right to program a Turner time slot, which was believed to be on the TBS network for a set number of years, regardless of if WCW existed by that point. Did you get that? In other words, the deal was set up so that Fusion would purchase WCW, and regardless of whether WCW died or not, they would still have those programming blocks to do whatever they want with it. They would belong to them. Now, this was a problem. Well, let's go to the book here. We'll go with the exact quote from Brian Bedall from Evans's book here. Okay, maybe this will help. This will probably help shed some light as to why this was bad for Kellner. Quote, "We structured a deal that was great for us of course being Fusion, but Jamie might have decided it wasn't so good for Turner. We had negotiated into the deal certain rights to the time slot in case WCW was canceled. We retained the right for a period of time to continue to program the time slot. We looked at the time slot as a valuable asset because if we were going to pay all this money for the property, we didn't want to take on the risk of it being canceled. Of course, Turner couldn't be in the position where they had a valuable time slot with a guarantee essentially to never cancel the show in it. So my recollection is that when Jamie came in, he looked at that as being something that they weren't willing to give, unquote. Now, that explanation makes a ton of sense as to why Jamie Kellner would pull the plug on this. Kellner, and like it comes straight out of the mouth of Brian Bedall, right there. The Fusion deal had something, and this is David Bixenspan who uses this terminology. A lot of the research that I'm using today comes from David Bixenspan. You should follow him on Twitter, of course, and over at babyfacevheel.com. He said the Fusion deal had what he viewed as something of a poison pill, right? That Fusion would still control the time slots even if WCW ceased to exist. That was a problem. So he got fed up, he being Kellner, got fed up and canceled WCW outright to clean up the mess. He didn't want to deal with this. He didn't want to deal with these time slots still belonging to Fusion and then still having, this WCW mess hanging around. Especially since you consider, of course, let's not forget that it was losing like $60 million a year, which is not great. And then it also turns out that Steve Hayer, the Turner exec who had been negotiating the Fusion deal, had been trying to mess with Kellner politically for a while and left when Kellner took over the Turner networks. So in short, Fusion, so you could say that Hayer had set up this deal to make Kellner look like a goofball, to make him look like he didn't know what he was doing. So in short, Fusion was getting a sweet ass deal. Hey, how great of a deal are you getting? You're buying the assets of a company plus some guaranteed time slots that you can use even if you're done, or the assets that you bought, the programming you bought is no longer on TV. Let's say it gets canceled, right? That's a sweet ass deal. So you're getting that deal. They would win regardless of what happened to WCW, and was set up in a way by Steve Hayer, who was a political enemy inside of Turner, AOL, whatever the fuck. He was a political enemy of Kellner, who was trying to screw him over by letting a bad deal go through. Here's some more from Bix's article here. In the early part of March 2001, both The Torch and The Observer reported in passing that Turner president Steve Meyer was in charge of that side of the Fusion deal, but abandoned that post when he resigned. On its face, it didn't seem significant at the time. At least, retroactively, it answered the who question about the poison pill. And for why? The best answer we have comes from a March 12 electronic media article about Kellner's new role atop Turner that Chris Zellner found when we were recording the sale of WCW Part 2 over at their Between the Sheets Patreon, which is another thing that you should be into if you like deep dives into the history of pro wrestling. Listen, so this came from the electronic media article. Quote, simultaneous with the announcement of Mr. Kellner's ascension was the exit of Stephen Hayer, the Turner lieutenant who had, in the words of one insider, quote, been trying to kill Jamie at every turn after the merger of Time Warner and Turner's Empire, unquote. Reported Michael Greppi. Mr. Hayes landed the next day at Coca-Cola, where he's in charge of developing new products. I like this. It's just wild, right? So if this deal had gone through, it could have made, like I said, could have made Kellner look like a complete joke. So he decided to pull the plug on it, and that's why he decided to just cancel the whole thing. Just, like, forget about it. We're just pulling the show off the air, period. I don't want to deal with this. Now, at the time, the Fusion deal was said to be worth $53 million. The deal made no sense if there was no guaranteed TV. So without the guaranteed television spots, Fusion pulled out, and Vince McMahon was able to purchase WCW and all its intellectual property for $2.5 million. And McMahon didn't have to honor any of the contracts. And then later, WWE paid $1.7 million for the tape library, which has since been paid for a couple of times. And I know this is the thing here is that this happens, the death of Kellner happens while, this series on Vice about the death of WCW is on right now. Like it's a coincidence, of course, right? But it's also kind of it's also very sad that this happened. Poor Jamie Kellner. But there is this series going on Vice, where we're revisiting once again. We're going through the narrative of who killed WCW, right? And I'm not watching it because I gotta at some point we have to move on. And maybe I'm a little cynical at this point, but I was fully expecting the people who were around and in charge to not take any responsibility and just hammer home a lot of the points that they've been making for years. And some of the said points have been debunked in certain situations, like Kellner being the guy who killed WCW, the guy who hated wrestling. And this is not necessarily, it's not news to me. The news that there was this poison pill is fairly new and starts to explain a lot, but no one was really, once you took a step back and you removed yourself from all the emotions that were happening at the time, then you're like, maybe Kellner wasn't like the one guy who destroyed everything. Not unlike Murder on the Orient Express, I think the death of WCW had multiple people doing it. There were multiple culprits doing it. If you've never read Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, I'm sorry that I spoiled the ending. I just realized, but then again, I'm thinking, at this point in your life, you should have read it, and if you didn't, you're never gonna, so. But, look, it's a classic. What do you want from me? Hamlet dies. Brutus kills Caesar. What do you want from me? No, I'm not. For some reason my Google Home just activated. That was very weird. Okay, stop. That's very weird. I know you guys are probably can't hear it, but no, stop. Hey Google, stop. It started playing music. This is the kind of shit that's gonna get me content ID'd on YouTube. Anyway. So I watched one episode. I think it's episode 2, right? The one which is heavily focused on Eric Bischoff. And I felt like, and again, I don't want to get into it because this is not a review of the show, but I thought he got off scot-free on that one, where it sort of felt like it's like that the feeling you're supposed to get with Eric Bischoff is he tried his best, but look down the road. Here comes the real villain, Vince Russo. And don't get me wrong, Vince Russo absolutely dismantled the creative of WCW. Like he was absolutely terrible. But you know, when I was looking at episode 2, I was like, yeah, you know what, they're going really easy on him. Like if this was, you know, if I had been the interviewer there's some statements that Eric was doing where I was like, could you explain that? Where did you get the number you just came out that you just produced? Do you have a source on that? Like, I'd be pressing him so much more. But I guess, you know, that's not what we wanted, right? You know, the point being is that there's a lot of moving parts to WCW's demise. You know, I would actually argue that the demise of WCW started at Starrcade when Hulk Hogan wouldn't properly do the job for Sting. Sting was returning his first match like in forever, and you know they decided not to put him over because he wasn't tanned enough. You know that story. But you know, Eric Bischoff, he played a major role in all of this. Previous to that, you know, his reckless spending is part of it. Hey, do you know? You know, we know a lot of wrestlers' salaries in 1999 when Eric Bischoff was still around, when he had still been taking care of everything. The racial discrimination lawsuit that was filed in WCW at the time allowed us some insight here. Do you want to hear some numbers? You want to hear a couple of numbers? I want to thank Rich Krejci of the Voices of Wrestling podcast, who did some fantastic work for his own reviews of the Who Killed WCW reviews that he does over behind the paywall. I'm not going to give away a lot, but you can go pay for it just like the rest of us do. But listen, in 1999, Hulk Hogan was earning $4.6 million. Oh, for his contract? For how many years, Warren? For 1999. Bill Goldberg, $5.1 million. Bret Hart, $2.6. Sting, $1.9. Randy Savage, $1.6. Lex Luger, $1.3. And it goes down right into the mid-card. Ask me, Warren, how much was Ernest the Cat Miller making? I'll tell you, $318,000. How much was Scotty Riggs making? $207,000. You know how much Conan was making? $500,000. $510,000. Rick Steiner, $176,000. His brother Scott, $696,000. Oh, but that's for their whole contract. That's for the year 1999. Like I said, there's a lot of things that were contributing here. Vince Russo, who was poised to be the savior. I don't know. I didn't have the number for Disco, unfortunately. Chat was asking if I had how much was Disco making. I don't know, unfortunately, and who cares? Anyway, that doesn't matter. Let's move on. Vince Russo was poised as the savior after after Bischoff's exit from the company, right? He made matters worse with his extremely poor creative and his propensity to putting himself over. Turner executives had allegedly, apparently some wacky accounting, right? Sure. But that doesn't account for all the bad stuff that was going on the production side, on TV, that was being delivered onto our plates. And we must not forget the man who finally put the axe into WCW. And it is not Jamie Kellner. It is not Eric Bischoff. It's not Vince Russo. It's not Kevin Nash. It's Vince McMahon, the territory slayer himself. Been doing that all his life. Vince picked up the assets for $4.2 million and then had an idea. This is from Dave Meltzer here. Quote, McMahon's original idea was to have a storyline where he would be caught having an affair with Tori Wilson. At the same time, it would be announced in the storyline that Shane McMahon had outmaneuvered his father and purchased WCW. Due to the affair, Linda McMahon would divorce Vince. In the divorce, she would get control of Raw and he would get control of SmackDown. She would then give the Monday night time slot to Shane, where it would become WCW Nitro. And this is not a report from the Observer from like fucking 2009, 2001 here. This is a recent article that Dave put out on the 23rd, 2 days ago. Ed Cohen, who handled scheduling, immediately had to redo schedules to create a WCW touring brand. Weeks later, he literally had to undo 18 months of scheduling when McMahon decided to drop the entire idea because he sensed from the crowd reaction in Tacoma, Washington, that his audience would not accept a WCW promotion that the company had convinced its fan base was the enemy. And the Tacoma audience, that's the audience that had to watch Booker T versus Buff Bagwell. One of the landmark moments in pro wrestling history, because the story goes, and I knew this beforehand, I think it's a fairly well-known story, that when Vince put Bagwell and Booker in the ring, and his thing was, show me what you got, go out there and have a great match, put it over with the crowd. And they failed, so they failed Vince's test. The Tacoma audience didn't care about this. And Vince, based on that match alone, decided to stop investing time in making WCW a thing in his company. He instead preferred to bury it 10 feet underground with the Invasion pay-per-view, and that's a whole other discussion, right? That was the final nail in the coffin of WCW. If WCW was a corpse, there's a bunch of people that were putting the coffin together. Russo, built some of it, and so did Bischoff, and so did Kevin. A whole bunch of people got involved in this, and then Vince just nailed it shut once and for all, and then flipped it over into a ditch and threw some dirt on top. And ultimately, here's the thing: the question, people wonder, would WCW in 2001 would it have been good? Maybe. There's no way to know. There's absolutely no way to know. But ending up with a WCW that had been WWEized, that would have been turned to the WWE side of things, not unlike what they did with ECW, was probably the path it was on. The old WCW that a lot of us knew would have been unrecognizable. And ultimately, Vince McMahon got what he wanted, which was to stamp out his competition and be the sole survivor. and being the carny outfit that pro wrestling has been over decades, right? Nobody batted an eye at this. Nobody batted an eye at, the market leader buying out its closest competition on a national scale. No antitrust issues, no monopoly bells being rung, nothing. It's just carnies suckering on other carnies. The sale went off unabated and effectively sent wrestling in the United States into an unprecedented era where only one reasonable employer existed. It turned the final screw in what Vince had started back into the 80s when he started gobbling up the territories, stamping out those who wouldn't be with him and just chewing up those who decided to side with him. There would be no room for professional wrestling, only WWE. And honestly, look, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Honestly, what is an owner supposed to do, right? An owner of a wrestling promotion, okay? Maneuver and strategize with the best intentions with their own company in mind. That's what you do. You don't think about how are you affecting others. It's like, how are your actions affecting your company, right? And corporations are not charities. Corporations exist to make money and grow. And if they don't make money and they don't grow, they are doomed to fail. They will die. It's cutting off the oxygen supply. Vince never had the best intentions for pro wrestling. He wanted to be the only game in town. He didn't want to work with others because he didn't want anyone else putting his nose in his business. Look, he had a couple of relationships with Japanese promotions, in the 80s, the 90s, stuff that his father had started up, like working with New Japan, did some things with All Japan. He didn't see them as threats though, because he was still back then in the old territories mindset where these guys in Japan are not going to come and horn in on his territory. They're all the way on the other fucking side of the Pacific. He's fine here. He's super. So they're not going, it's not as if the Minnesota territory is trying to move in. No. They're not going to try and muscle their way into the national North American scene. So he didn't feel threatened either. But he decided he worked better alone in isolation without having to make do with anyone but himself. And he didn't care about the advancement of the sport of pro wrestling. He cared about his vision of pro wrestling, his sports entertainment vision, right? One that was free of competition and other promotions nipping at his heels. One where top talent would have to come work for him if they wanted any kind of good money, because he would be the only place left to work at. And perhaps more importantly for Vince was his brand. Not the one brand that Ted Turner built. That his brand was going to be the centerpiece. WWE was going to be the centerpiece. Not WCW, not Ted Turner. A guy who I believe, truly did hate, that he really did not like. So as Vince acquired everything from his biggest national competitor, instead of trying to maintain a legacy of something meaningful for WCW, a company that meant something, that was meaningful for a huge swath of fans for many years, he pulled it off of life support. There was no true national alternative anymore. The playing field had shrunk and stayed as such for practically 2 decades. And the damage was done. Even with a viable alternative being available for fans for the first time in years, right now in 2024, people only know wrestling one way, Vince's way. It's the single way. And in that aspect, He has won. Vince won. He completely stamped out what pro wrestling has always been and converted it into his way of seeing things. And not in an organic fashion, not doing it not doing it in a way where he won hearts and minds. No, because he became the only game in town. And you had to play by his rules without any accountability, as Chad is pointing out. He truly and sincerely won. The marketplace of fans at this stage right now is not receptive for anything new or different. There is no curiosity being put out there by fans no inquisitiveness, looking at pro wrestling and trying, hey, who is this guy? And looking to find out who this new wrestler they just discovered, who he is, where he's wrestled, where he's coming from, where can I see his matches? None of that. There is no curiosity. WWE fans sit back and absorb. And the fans who might be slightly open to watching other stuff look at AEW and try to find ways to say, I don't like this because there's not enough stories, there's not enough larger than life characters, and not just fans. I'm talking pundits. I'm talking people who work in media for a living, who all they knew their entire life is WWE. So when they see someone else doing something that they don't really like, instead of trying to understand what's going on, instead of trying to see that there might be just a different flavor to this wrestling thing, they want AEW to become another WWE. All they really wanted and all they really want is more WWE. And this is the situation we're in right now because Vince McMahon decided to shut everything down and became the only game in town. And we're suffering through it right now. No one speaks about how successful as a startup promotion that is just over 5 years old, how successful of a promotion AEW is. We all hand wave TNA and MLW and the NWA, and with reason, they're staying afloat. It's good, don't get me wrong, but they're not even remotely close to the levels of success that AEW has experienced and continues to experience. Everyone loses their mind and says, oh, the only way AEW is going to win is if WWE goes off TV. Win what? Win what? We can live with another national wrestling promotion that offers something different. We can go through it. This war exists in the minds of people trying to latch on to things, trying to stick up and defend for the biggest promotion in the world, $1 billion company. Why are we sticking up for $1 billion company? I don't know. I don't know why people who watch this $1 billion company feel threatened. They're the market leader. No one disputes that. They're the market leader. They do great business. No one is disputing that. But we're not going to have reasonable thoughts. We're not going to sit back and go, hey, you know what? AEW is the first promotion in about 20 years to be as successful as it has been, regardless. Even if it doesn't have 1 million viewers per week, it is still a high success. And that is because a lot of the people who do commentary, punditry on the internet today don't know anything else and do not have the intellectual curiosity of trying to understand something else than what is served to them on a plate. And some of them may have very clear agendas, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just lazy. I did not expect To go off on this tangent, after talking about the death of Jamie Kellner, may he rest in peace, Charles Skaggs, also known as Cold Scorpio, was taken into custody by the Kansas City Metro Patrol for a 24-hour investigation hold after being accused of stabbing a man at Love's Travel Shop, where he works as a security guard, during the early hours of Sunday, June 15. This came to our attention when TMZ reported the incident, and that Skaggs is facing 2 felony charges with a court appearance set for July after posting bond last weekend. Our boys over at Post Wrestling obtained the probable cause statement from the Clay County, Missouri prosecutor's office, which includes a description of the incident from Skaggs, the unnamed victim, and an unnamed witness. This is what the statement says. Officers were dispatched to the scene at 3:40 a.m. on June 15 and found the victim lying on the ground with a witness applying a cloth to the man's head while he was going in and out of consciousness. The victim had various stab wounds to his head, chest, buttocks, back of the leg, and abdomen. 2 stab wounds to the chest were described as 6 to 7 inches, and the other 3 3 to 4 inches. Excuse me. He was transported to the Kansas City Hospital. The victim stated that he entered the store to withdraw money from the ATM and was confronted by Skaggs as he was exiting about smoking inside. The victim said he pushed Skaggs away when he got too close and claimed that Skaggs attacked the unarmed victim, who began to defend himself. Skaggs' perspective is that he was doing his rounds and saw the victim smoking inside and provided a warning, with the victim responding, "F you, what the F you gonna do?" Skaggs alleges self-defense here. He asked the man to leave, placed his hand on the victim's back, and was told, of course, by the perpetrator, "Get your effing hands off me. Don't effing touch me. I'm a effing kill you. I'm a effing break you." I'm trying to cut down on the curses, because I think YouTube really doesn't like the amount of cursing I do, and I think it's playing against me. I think it's not popping me high up in the algorithm stuff. I'm just saying, just so you know why I'm doing effing. And I know I let a couple of F bombs slip earlier. I know this, but I guess I could fix it in post too, but I don't wanna. I don't wanna. Now, okay, so Skaggs says the victim threatened to knock him out, who warned him to back up and push the victim back, which led to the victim attempting to grapple with Skaggs. Look, I mean, Scorpio has always been a pretty good wrestler, but his ground game always kind of sucked, so it's probably a good strategy. Skaggs stated that he was reaching for his brass knuckles, but reached the knife. Okay. Skaggs said he took out his knife in a defensive stance and warned the victim to back up, but he tried to tackle Skaggs and they began to fight. Skaggs noted that at one point, the victim wrestled him to the ground and Skaggs, quote, probably stabbed him a couple of times as he was punching and using the knife at the same time to get away from the victim, unquote. This is again according to the report. This kind of sounds like, I only slightly choked him up. Boy, what did CM Punk say? I lightly choked him out. I don't remember. It's like, I probably stabbed him a couple of times. It's just, you're like a 4-inch, a 6-inch deep stab wound in the chest. It's more like it's not quite an oopsie at this point, The report observed that Skaggs had swelling and redness on the left side of his face and a red mark on the bridge of his nose, minor scratches and redness on his fingers and hands, a laceration to his left thumb, a large red scratch on the inside of Skaggs' left forearm and elbow, and redness to the inside of his right forearm elbow. So, you know, that's consistent with a fight. Let's be honest. The statement at the end of the report notes that, quote, due to the violent nature of this incident, Charles Skaggs should be considered a danger to the public, unquote. This is terribly sad. This is an extremely, extremely sad and disappointing situation. You know, Scorp has had his run-ins with the law and addiction, and I'm definitely not saying that he's still using, but, you know, and not just the marijuana, right? I think he's been on record saying that that he used to do crack, and when he was hired by WWF, he did more crack because he had more money, so he used more often, right? And, you know, just a talented fucking wrestler, just a talented guy that you're just, where you can absolutely ask yourself the question, like, if he had got his shit together, what kind of career would he really have had? Because even just recently, just up to a couple of years ago, he was still hitting the indies and still doing some good stuff. Yeah, he's not ECW Arena to Cold Scorpio anymore, a far cry from it, but he was still able to go. And to hear that, like, now he's working as a security guard to make ends meet, you know, it's like, kind of breaks your heart. It kind of breaks your heart. But we'll keep an eye on this story here. It's a wild one, and I'm sure there's footage of this. Like, it's in a what is it? A convenience store? A Love's Travel Shop. I'm going to research this live. What is a Love's Travel? I've never heard of Love's Travel Shop. Yeah, it's travel. Okay, it's like it's a roadside. It's a roadside stop, right? Over 400 locations and counting. Loves dog parks, so you can even take out the doggo and let him run around as you're crossing, going up and down the road here. Yeah, you know, the truck stops. It's a truck stop, essentially. Gas station, truckers, thank you, chat. You know, it's, yeah, you encounter your fair share of weirdos. I think it's kind of sad to think that this is what he has to do to make ends meet. You know, it's not a great situation, but we'll report back on it if we get anything new out of this, anything newsworthy. Just before we get to the Forbidden Door preview, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble are all headed to Indianapolis. Not this year, but over the next couple of years. This was reported in media, I believe, yesterday, right? On June 24th. WWE, I'm going to get the broad strokes here off of the article in The Hollywood Reporter. WWE struck a broad-based partnership that will bring 3 WWE Stadium events, including WrestleMania, to Indianapolis, kicking off with the Royal Rumble on February 1st, 2025 at Lucas Oil Stadium. The stadium will be the host of all 3 shows. What a gift. What a gift. Michael Cole on Raw last night, as I was, listening to it in background noise, literally called this a gift from WWE. It's like, no, this is not. I don't have to pay for my gifts. That's the point of a gift. Do people sincerely think that WWE is just rolling into Indianapolis in their They're not getting anything for it? This is not a gift. Jermaine Presley, nice to see you. And welcome. Well, I mean, look, after the event, we can make freedom of information requests, right? You can find out what your local government is paying. And I think you should be able to do that. It makes sense. And look, and frankly, this is not a WWE thing. It's like, oh, Warren, you're so poo-pooing. You always poo-poo on WWE. Why do you always poo-poo on WWE? What is your fascination with poo-poo and WWE? Do you have some kind of fetish in regards to poo-poo and WWE? Would you like to see the WWE covered in poo-poo? Would that wake you up in the middle of the night and keep you awake for days on end, knowing that WWE was covered in poo-poo? Warren? No. As someone who pays taxes, and there's a fair chance, maybe some of you, according to my demographics of the show, I expect that most of you are paying taxes in some way or another. You're not the Logan Paul audience. As someone who pays taxes, this is the kind of shit I want to know. I want to know how much this is being how much this is costing me, the city. What projects are we setting aside to boost this? They keep saying, they say in the articles, it's like, we've got 200 the economic boon from these events is around 250 million for Los Angeles last year. And I'm like, okay. Can we see numbers then? What are the sources? What are the reports? Why are we taking all of this at face value? This is fairly significant because it is local governments spending a lot of fucking money. And if the returns are 250 million for the community, for the city, I shudder to think how much they're paying for these events. Because WWE absolutely considers that in their price, where they say, this is the price, but look at the windfall that you're getting. 250 million for your city, for your local businesses. Wow. That's definitely worth this exorbitant price that we are asking for. And it's not a WWE thing. I don't like corporations. I don't trust corporations. I just don't. I don't. That's the lefty in me. That's the leftist in me coming out. What do you want from me? Under the deal with the Indiana Sports Group, let's go back to the news bit. Still from the Hollywood Reporter. Under the deal with the Indiana Sports Corp, which was unveiled on June 24th, the wrestling promotion, part of TKO Group, will also put on a 2-night WrestleMania and a 2-night SummerSlam in Indianapolis in future years. The events are considered 3 of WWE's Big 4 premium live events of the year, with the 4th being Survivor Series. Now, I've seen a lot of analysis around in regards to this specific point here, where people are saying, oh, well, WWE's seeing they're probably seeing that the bubble's going to burst and they just want to guarantee some money. And I'm like, well, I don't know if they're seeing that the bubble is going to burst, but I think that as an entertainment company, and especially a wrestling promotion, if you still want to call it that, but for the sake of the argument, let's still call it a wrestling promotion. WWE knows that its business ebbs and flows, right? There's peaks and valleys. And we're in a fucking peak right now. So they want to ride this wave of super popularity where they're like, we are unfucking touchable, man. And maybe in 2 years, 3 years, we're going to start cratering. There's going to be shit happening that WWE won't be able to hit the heights that it once did. So yeah, if they want to lock down some cities for how many years, I don't know, with these huge events and get a big payday because of them, all the more power to them. It's capitalism after all. And, if the Indiana Sports Corporation are dumb enough to do it, to ink a deal saying that, in 5 years we're going to finally get a WrestleMania here. Okay. Sure, pal. Whatever you say. I don't know. This is from the press release that WWE put out. Quote, "We are excited to bring this groundbreaking partnership to Indianapolis and our state," said Patrick Talty, president of Indiana Sports Corporation. "For over 4 decades, our city's sports strategy has brought in millions of visitors and priceless hours of international brand building media coverage." Have I ever, I think I've said this a few times. I don't know if it's you guys know I work in PR, right? Did you know this? I work in PR. So, I write this kind of press release like often. It's part of my job. And this is the kind of stuff, priceless hours of international brand building media coverage. Like, I know what he's saying, that the words are just like, this is the kind of corporate speak that, gets the investors, gets all the investors all shivery and oogly googly. Yes. Where in fact, all he's saying is that, our sports strategy has brought in millions of visitors and media attention. And a brand building media coverage. Oh, come on now. This partnership with WWE continues to push that strategy forward in new and exciting ways. We look, again, the PR speak is tremendous. I commend them. We look forward to welcoming the WWE Universe to our community and state and showing them all that Indy has to offer. He used to work with WWE? Mr. Talty? Patrick Talty? Really? Let me check. I want to check this out. Patrick Talty, WWE. Of course, I had to hit the microphone. Oh yeah, look at that. He used to be the senior vice president of live events. Haha. I did not know that. Thank you, chat. Again, from the press release, from our boy, Chris Legentil, WWE EVP Talent Relations and Head of Communications at World Wrestling Entertainment. Quote, "Indianapolis is a fantastic city for major events, and we're excited to invite the WWE Universe to Lucas Oil Stadium for Royal Rumble in 2025 and a future SummerSlam and WrestleMania. Patrick and the team at Indiana Sports Corp have done a phenomenal job bolstering local economics and tourism, and we're proud to partner with them to shine a light on the great state of Indiana. Additionally, under the partnership, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and WWE live events will emanate from areas across Indiana, including Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and Evansville." Ah, yes. Internationally known, renowned cities. These great beacons of civilization. Evansville. Look, I mean, I don't remember any kind of deal like this happening for a wrestling promotion ever, of this magnitude, of this importance. And I think it would be fair to assume that WWE is going to try to lock in a couple of more deals like this. I wouldn't even be surprised if the next deal, maybe not the next deal, but if one of the deals that they announce similar to this one where they guarantee, big time shows, I wouldn't be surprised if a big European city gets it. They've been talking about WrestleMania in London for, they started teasing that hardcore. At this was it this WrestleMania that they started? When was at the Clash of the Castle? I don't remember. When was there was the thing where or in Australia? I'm so confused now. They're so international, I can't keep up. The point is that it was London or Paris after the Backlash show. That's right. See, I know it wasn't that far off. Bless you, chat. Thank God you're here. I wouldn't be surprised if WWE were just like, hey, yeah, we're gonna do Survivor Series, like all of the big four PLEs in London this year in the UK, or over the next 3 years or something. I wouldn't be surprised in the least. Hopefully, everything turns out right. Everything turns out good. And that WWE continues making gobs of money. And that the creative follows. I'm at a point where I don't know what WWE could do creatively. I'm legitimately at a point where I do not know what WWE could do creatively that would turn off its audience at this point. Like I don't know what they could do. In the realm of plausible, right? Like I think WWE fans are so entrenched and they just swallow up everything that happens that it's just like I don't think there's anything wrong that they could do. At least at the moment that we're speaking about it here in 2024. And we'll see we'll see down the road. We have reached the time of the day to talk about Forbidden Door 2024. Preview it, the big pay-per-view that's happening this upcoming weekend. If I can get my notes straight here. Happening this upcoming weekend at the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York on June 30th. It is the third installment of the big crossover show between AEW and New Japan. And this has not been a great build. And you can't sugarcoat it. There are reasons for it, and the reasons are all bad reasons. None of them are good reasons. But this has been a bad pay-per-view. But then again, look, it's like I feel like this is the third time this year we've had this conversation about an AEW pay-per-view. Where we're sitting down here and we're saying, oh, the build hasn't been great. Since Revolution, okay? Past Revolution, I mean. I don't think anyone argued that Revolution, that people were looking forward to Revolution. But I feel like we were saying, the Dynasty build, it's kind of bad. The Double or Nothing build, it's kind of bad. The Forbidden Door, it's kind of bad. And I can't sit here and say, doesn't matter if the build is bad because the pay-per-views rule, because Double or Nothing wasn't that great. I thought it was one of the weaker AEW pay-per-views. So it's not like Dynasty, which turned out to be a tremendous pay-per-view, just a fucking fantastic show with a legendary match on top of it all. Yeah, it's weird. And in 2022 and 2023, the anticipation for those two Forbidden Door shows carried so much weight. Just carried so much weight, made you excited. And despite, happened within the build itself. Look, you remember the first the first Forbidden Door? You remember all the injuries that just threw all the booking plans out the window? Not all of them. I'm exaggerating, but for a lot of matches and some big time matches, I was like, we got to rethink this. And Tony would admit to it after the show. He said, look, there were so many injuries, so many guys getting hurt that we couldn't put on the show that we had all initially envisioned, right? But still, we got a great show, like an arguably great pay-per-view. Inarguably great pay-per-view. Last year, the train was on rails. We didn't have people, falling off right and left. There was no injury bug. No, the show connected. It happened, and it was a good time over in Toronto. This year, I don't know. Doesn't feel like a big crossover show. Doesn't feel special. Doesn't have that sheen over the past 2 years. Why? Diminishing returns? I absolutely adhere to that. That, I think, is reason number one. Excuse number one. I think this kind of pay-per-view ends up being a diminishing returns concept where, you get the big matches out of the way. You get once you get, Danielson versus Okada, once you get Mox versus whoever the fuck, and Mox has even wrestled a lot in New Japan. So there's a lot of dream matches that are already kind of, crossed off. They're off the list, Not that there wouldn't be any others, but, Tanahashi, this is late stage Hiroshi Tanahashi, not necessarily as exciting as he once was. Tetsuya Naito is always a guy as popular as he is, Is he coming into work, or is he gonna wrestle with his t-shirt on? These are always the things that you keep in mind. So once you get all these matches out of the way, and you put on crossover matches throughout the year as well. We already had Sabre versus Danielson too, It's like you're getting these crossovers regardless. You're getting these guys working promotions, you're having these promotions having working relationships now, as it should be, as it once were, and as it should be. The idea of the Forbidden Door becomes much less, where wrestling promotions don't work with each other. Now they kind of do, and they kind of do at any time of the year. They just bring in guys, and the sheen of the promotion of the pay-per-view is absolutely in an environment of diminishing returns. For 20 years, we talked enough about Vince in the past 2 decades earlier, but over the past 20 years, we've had very little crossover potential because WWE lived in a silo and did not want to work with anyone else. If they worked with anyone else, it meant that they were eventually going to swallow them up. So that excitement didn't exist. WWE lived in its bubble, and everything else for them didn't exist. When AEW arrived and said, no, we're cracking this wall, we're opening this Forbidden Door, and we're working with other promotions, it felt fresh for a lot of fans, a lot of new fans, where they were like, holy shit, we're working with New Japan. AEW, with some of the best wrestlers in the world, are working with New Japan, which also has some of the best wrestlers in the world. This is just tremendous. And as you do more and more of it, I think you really have to dig up some special stuff, some special matches. Otherwise, it just becomes diminishing returns. Because look, this year, right? Look, this year, for the crossovers, what do we got so far? We have Danielson and Shingo Takagi, which is good. Anyway, we'll talk about the matches later, right? But we got Danielson and Takagi We've got Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr., which we've seen before. And we've got Jon Moxley versus Tetsuya Naito, which again, we've seen before. Danielson and Takagi, we've seen it before, but 14 years ago. That's fine. We're having the rematch to a match that happened 14 years ago. So, we kind of had the big crossover ones, right? I think that's a reason why it doesn't feel as juicy. And the big New Japan guys, Okada, Ospreay, they work for AEW now. So this idea of having these international superstars coming to work your Forbidden Door show on North American soil is not there because New Japan doesn't have many international superstars anymore. You've got Tetsuya Naito. He's been on the decline. Hiroshi Tanahashi has been on the decline for a while, and I think everyone's just coming around and acquiescing that yes, this is the truth. This is no longer the ace of the universe kind of thing. So, I think there's a part of that where the stars are here. Will Ospreay wrestles every week, every other week on Dynamite on Wednesday nights. It's just something that happens now. You can absolutely ask the question when you look at the card, you say, why aren't there more New Japan guys on there? And that's legitimate. It's to the point that the main event of the show is for the AEW title. It's not, and it's between two AEW guys. Okay, why aren't we getting more? Who would you put in that spot if you want a truly main event, make it special? Who is the top New Japan star that AEW would want to have challenge for their world championship on the show? There's no one. That's the point. But there's not all that many New Japan guys on the card yet. I heard that the guys aren't getting paid more for doing the show. Again, this is a rumor, something I kind of heard, but it also makes sense because there's been, people have been taking salary cuts. This happens when corporations don't hit their targets. People in Japan, people take salary cuts. The executives, everyone. The talent took cuts. Maybe they don't want to go, to North America, take the flight, book a room, stay around here for a couple of days and fly back and then go on a Road 2 show or get ready for the G1 if they're not getting paid more. Because don't forget, this is not exclusively an AEW show. This is a crossover event. This is billed as AEW in New Japan. There's also talk that there's resentment backstage towards AEW as well. We've seen it spill into we've seen it spill onto New Japan television, where Yota Tsuji has been one of the more vocal guys, and but like I said, in fairness, who are the big stars that you want to send over from New Japan, right? Maybe they don't want, maybe they're not sending any stars because they don't have any, because New Japan is in a bit of a rebuilding phase. And let's be honest, so is All Elite Wrestling. That is still reeling from the loss of CM Punk and whatever bullshit happened in 2023 with MJF and the Brochacho stuff, which I still think has a tremendous impact. So in fairness, maybe both guys are like, we're doing our best here this year with what we got. Now, I have zero excitement for Forbidden Door this year. I'm going to watch it, but because the chances, we're going to talk about the card. And I think the card on paper has the potential to blow our minds as it stands right now. I'm pretty sure we're not done yet. But I don't have excitement. And I thought this would be, like, unquestionably my favorite annual event. Especially after last year when I was able to go to Toronto and see it in person. It was so much fun. And it was so exciting to see New Japan stars there, and everything was great. It was a great show. I thought it was going to be one of my favorite events, and this year I'm like, okay. Now, if you want to flip this around, as I was looking at the card being put together and I was thinking about the status, especially in New Japan, of who are going to be the next big guys. They're not pushing anyone with any true success. Sonata was a complete flop. They're not pushing the young guys. I was expecting, because CMLL was around, because they were doing things with Stardom, I was expecting a bigger presence from CMLL and Stardom, which, because, as opposed to the diminishing returns thing I was talking about earlier, we hadn't really seen much Lucha Libre or Joshi on the show. So I'm like, okay. So maybe the show turns into more of a showcase as opposed to just being crossover matches. Maybe we're going to see some showcase matches from Stardom, from CMLL. Maybe we'll get, we'll have them run their shows. We'll have them run some matches from these promotions on the show, since they don't have exciting new stars, right? Why not push more Forbidden Door into being a party of pro wrestling? A grab bag of different styles, of different people that you may not have ever heard of, may not have ever seen before, but they're about to wow you with their stuff. You could run a CMLL Cibernetico, right? You could throw in the high speed girls from Stardom, right? And in two multi-man matches, and then you're like, holy shit, yeah, exactly, chat. Like the original All In was supposed to be. A tremendous feeling of just a celebration of pro wrestling. But we're not even doing that. And ultimately, I can't help but feel like this is another symptom of the bigger problem in AEW, which is that nothing really matters anymore. Like, stuff happens week in, week out, and nothing really goes anywhere. No one moves up, no one moves down. It's just stuff happening, things flatline, or you have something really good going, and the follow-up isn't great. I don't think right now, AEW can do meaningful long-term booking. I don't think it's been able to do that for a bit, which was its trademark, which is wild. That was the trademark of the company. This is the company that gave us Omega and Adam Page and the Elite, right? Which was tremendous. And Hangman's rise to a top guy. Now, I just sit back and I'm like, I don't trust them. They belt up someone, they try to elevate someone, and it falls flat. Look at Orange Cassidy. We all thought that this was Orange Cassidy's opportunity to break the glass ceiling, but back to the mid-card you go, sport. I don't trust them. And it sucks, It sucks for Swerve, who is in this limping moment in AEW's history. His championship reign overall is not going to be tremendous or memorable, and we're going to look back on it. We're going to look back on this moment, and we're going to, years from now, and we're going to pull up the numbers, and we're going to be like, look, everything was on the decline. Attendance was in decline. Ratings were in decline. All the business metrics under Swerve's reign showed that everything was going downwards. And I feel, and I've told y'all that on the Dynamite review every Thursday that I do, I've been saying over the past couple of weeks where I feel finally like Swerve is biting into this championship. Like I feel like he's swerving into becoming the champion, into becoming a guy. He's starting to feel it. You can feel it in his swagger, in his presence, in the way that he conducts himself, the way he expresses himself. It's like a switch went off. He's starting to feel like a big guy, like a top guy, right? It's starting to click. And trust me, everyone needs to chill the hell out when it comes to the ratings, right? Especially the big ratings number or the very big big numbers from last Wednesday, which I'm not going to talk about. We don't do wrestling ratings talk much here on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. We like to talk about attendance and that kind of stuff, which I think is an extremely telling and tangible, very, very tangible business metric, as opposed to ratings, which is really something that laymen shouldn't be involved in. But even on top of that, even though the number was historically low for Dynamite, I'm not making a point to talk about it and dissect it. First of all, I don't have the chops to do it. I don't have the years of wrestling analysis and comprehension to break it down and tell you, this is going to be this rating compared to so and so. Like, I don't even know how to properly meme it. That's how bad. That's how bad my ratings analysis is. But one thing that I do know about pro wrestling ratings is that if a number dips dramatically one week, you can scream to the heavens that it's a disaster. You can belly laugh your way to the bank saying AEW is dead. But it's the following week that really counts. If it's a trend, it's a problem. I understand that perfectly. Numbers dip dramatically, don't get me wrong. It's a big fucking dip. But let's see what happens this coming Wednesday, tomorrow, or today, depending on when you're listening to this. Let's see what happens on this Wednesday's Dynamite rating, and then we'll see if there's truly a problem or not. But right now, I think everyone needs to chill out, regardless of how it's impacting the legacy of Swerve Strickland's first run in AEW. I don't think he's had meaningful championship defenses. I think he's been a solid champion. I think he's been well presented. And like I said, I think he's getting the groove. I think something clicked. I think he got it, because he comes across more like a top guy right now than in the entirety of his run so far. And Will's a superstar. But what do you do this weekend? What do you do at Forbidden Door? Do you belt him up? I don't know if you do. I honestly don't know. Like, Will is hot. People love Will. He's great. He feels like a guy. But do you have him go into Wembley as world champion? Is this what we're doing? I don't know if you have him win. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's going to lose against Swerve. And they're going to have him lose via Don Callis family interference. And I know there's a big rumor going around that it might be Ricochet that they're bringing in to take out Will. And if they do go down that way, look, unless they pull off some of the coolest interference of all time, it's going to stink. And I'm going to hate it. I promise you right now, it's going to stink. I am not going to like it. I am going to come here next week and bury the hell out of the finish if they go in full-on interference, because the match is going to be phenomenal. I don't think anyone is arguing, I haven't seen it, that Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland is going to stink. Big match Swerve is the thing. We know big match Swerve exists. We've seen it with Adam Page. The feud that made Swerve into a top guy. We've seen it. And he's wrestling a friend, a buddy, a chum, a guy he's known for years and gets along well with, the guy who he's friends with. And like I said, at the very beginning of the whole thing, when it was announced on the Dynamite review on that Thursday, go and check the tape if you don't believe me. I said I wouldn't even be surprised if Will lobbies TK to have him lose against Swerve because he wants his buddy to go over. Because he wants his buddy to get a win on him, because he knows that'll help his prestige, his aura. He won't come across like a transitional champion or a lame duck champion, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't be, because that's the kind of thing Will Ospreay does. Ospreay understands the business. He knows what kind of position he's in. And I'm sure he is part of the crew trying to convince TK that he should lose to Swerve. Convinced. But I think the only way that you reasonably do this, not reasonably, no, Will could absolutely take a clean L. And he should. Swerve beating Will Ospreay, clean as a sheet, 1, 2, 3, be tremendous. And Will can absolutely take the loss. We don't have to do the interference, but they probably will. Because they're probably setting something up. I don't know about the Ricochet stuff. Like, I don't know anything. I haven't heard a single fucking thing. Excuse me, YouTube algorithm. Please forgive me. I haven't heard a single thing. But we just came off a pay-per-view where the majority of the matches all had interference in them. It was exhausting. So I'm just thinking about this, and then and it's sending shivers up and down my spine. So I'm not in a position of confidence here. So is Swerve going to hang on to the title in this match? Yes, I do believe he will. I don't think, strapping Will up as an emergency reaction to, ratings slipping or whatever the fuck, I don't think that's going to fix the problem. Because the problems are numerous and they don't exist with who is your champion. The problems are booking, storytelling, and making shit feel significant again, right? Look, again, on my Dynamite review just this past week, I was the guy sitting here saying, give us more cool matches. I love cool matches. The multi-man matches, that 8-man all-star match that they had on Dynamite last Wednesday, chef's kiss. Tremendous. That's what they should be doing every week. And what did I compound it? Why did I say it was a good idea? Not only because the guys work hard, not only because it always turns into a cool match, but because you can set all sorts of little stories in there, things that you can go back on, right? And that's where I'm saying it needs to feel significant. That's why you need to do things, not just throw cool matches together. Make these cool matches come together and give direction to stuff. Create stories in those matches. If most other matches happen and you had stuff happening in there, I wouldn't it wouldn't be that much of a problem, right? But it's the opposite. It's like most matches happen and there's no story, there's no follow-up, there's nothing to make you feel like this was a part of something. It's just like stuff happening. I'm booking for the sickos. Yeah, well, guess what? The sickos want continuity too. We love ourselves a Kazuchika Okada versus Ultimo Guerrero. Don't get me wrong. Despite how the match turned out. Like the concept of it, I'm like, holy shit, that's fine. But it's what comes of it after. And that match in a vacuum would be fine if everything around it in AEW felt significant. We could excuse it. We could be like, all right, this is good. But we're in a position, we're at a spot right now where nothing feels significant. Nothing feels like it matters anymore. So when you do matches that are ostensibly throwaway matches like Okada versus Ultimo Guerrero, it's just like it's one amongst others. Yes, it's a cool match. It's a sicko match, but the sickos like a little meat on their bone. And I'm definitely not saying here AEW needs more stories, needs one. I think AEW has plenty of those. We just need proper follow-ups. We want the long-term vision to return. It's not as bad as it was a couple of months ago, where everything really did feel slapdash and hurried. And I think that the fact that AEW is booking 2 tournaments right now is helping plan the booking over the next couple of weeks, because you have to plan tournaments in advance. You have to set up your brackets and like, okay, well, this is my winner. This is how we get there. And then you can't escape it. And oddly enough, that's when AEW shines. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the cool matches, but we get behind wrestlers and the follow-ups suck, and it takes the wind out of your sail, man. And I know AEW is in a spot where they're trying to build new people. Not unlike we were talking about with New Japan, and I will continue to give credit to AEW for trying new things, for trying stuff out, for putting Swerve at the top. A guy who I've always envisioned as a world champion, as a top guy, and he is now. But it takes balls to do it. It takes you need some gumption to be like, yeah, we're pulling the trigger on this, because you could waffle on it for so long. So I give them credit, and they're building up. I feel like there's something simmering, right? They're trying new stuff out with Swerve and Ospreay. They're fleshing out the women. I don't think the women's division, here's something you're not hearing a lot of talk about, but I think the women's division hasn't been this good in a long fucking time. Excuse me again, algorithm. But it has not been as good as it has been, as it is right now. With Mercedes in here, with Tony finally finding balance between the timeless Tony stuff and Tony Storm, the excellent pro wrestler, Mariah May, Statlander. Statlander is on the cusp of being huge. Willow is she is one of the best assets this company has. And then they're bringing in Mina Shirakawa to add in some flair into this, to give it a little pizzazz. This is something. And then your undercard, like the foundations of this women's division, you've got Anna Jay and Julia Hart, who are women that everyone agrees have been good bets, great hedged bets by Tony Khan, and these women have been paying dividends, and they are only getting better. And Sky Blue, I think, after a very weird 2023, I think she's found her footing. Miss Hardcore, Throw in Deonna Purrazzo in there if you want. Throw in Serena Deeb in there if you want. Thunder Rosa's there. And then there's the missing elements on top of it. Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker. The women's division in AEW has never been this solid. And we're trying stuff out. This only comes with experimentation. Putting stuff out there, seeing what's happening. We're getting a feud, a personal blood feud that doesn't involve a title in AEW, in the women's division, between Chris and Willow. Tremendous. So I can also appreciate that AEW is in a rebuilding mode and has been in a rebuilding mode since the CM Punk disaster. But we've got to reach a point, and I think we've reached that point where we cannot sit on this excuse and say, well, you know, CM Punk really took all the ensuing drama and the legal issues really took the wind out of our sails. Like at some point, look, you showed the footage. We're all over it. We're all over it. Hopefully you are too. They're trying things. They just need to get hot. And New Japan, like I said earlier, is doing the same thing here. But the difference here's the difference between New Japan and AEW. New Japan last week released the field for the G1 Climax this year, and they are putting their money where their mouth is. And we're going to talk about the play-ins a little later in the show. They put their money where their mouth is. They're putting over the new guys. They're putting the new guys into the positions of where it's time for them to shine. They're taking out the old guard. They're taking out people who have been systematically in G1s for like 17 years or whatever. And they're putting the new guys in. It's like, okay, time for y'all to make their spots, which is something Hiroshi Tanahashi told us he was going to do when he presented his 10-point plan. And everyone was like, okay, talk is cheap. Well, there you go. Now he's acting on it. Like, I can point to New Japan with that, with the composition of this year's G1 and say, okay, they are trying something different. They are trying to build new guys. You can see it. And I hope I can do that with AEW too. I hope I can turn around to AEW and say, okay, I see what you're doing. I see it. But right now I have no faith in the long-term booking. I have no faith in long-term stories. And listen, all of this discourse, all of this preamble to this preview for a card that I think is actually very good. This is the silly part of it, right? It's the most silly part of it. And I'm glad, chat, you're enjoying the talk at the same time. And that we're finding some common ground on the women's division at the same time. That all makes me happy. But let's get into the show itself. What do we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 8 matches announced for when I'm recording this, right? There will be more. You know, we know there's more guys in town. Like, yeah, they announced today on Dynamite tomorrow, or at least on Wednesday, whenever you're listening to this, we're getting the Blackpool Combat Club versus Los Ingobernables de Japón. We're getting Mox, Claudio, and Wheeler Yuta versus Shingo Takagi, Hiromu Takahashi, and Titan on fucking AEW TV on a Wednesday night. First of all, I couldn't be more excited for that match. That is completely my speed. But look, there's guys in town. There's guys in town. So there's going to be more matches that are going to be added here, right? And there's no matches announced for the 0 hour yet. Though I would say it's a safe guess. It's a safe bet to say that there will be 2 more matches added to the card, right? I think so. I'm terrified that we're going to get the Bucks versus the Acclaimed on this show. That to me, it screams Dynamite, not pay-per-view. But then again, I know I'm one of the, and I've been out on the Acclaimed longer than most of you. It has never been for me. And especially now at this stage where I feel like they need to tone this down, right? Look, to me, there's nothing good out of this. Didn't Jeff Cobb say that he was going to challenge someone? I feel like he had said that because he's the New Japan World Television Champion, right? And I feel like in a post-match interview after a New Japan show, he said, yeah, anyone in AEW Forbidden Door, I'm coming, you know? So why isn't he been announced? And it better not be like, you know, Lance Archer again, you know? Give us something with some meat on the bones, because Jeff Cobb's got a lot of that. But I feel like he was supposed to be on the show. And look, you know, Hiromu's in town. You know, are we ever going to get Hiromu versus Darby Allin? I feel like the stars are never aligned for that to happen. Anyway, let's go down the card here. Let's take a look at what we do know is coming. Hechicero is going to take on MJF. I mean, cool. Like, I mean, when you talk about a random, you know, Fire Pro Wrestling, you know, randomizer match, this is it. This is a perfect example. You're like, Hechicero versus MJF. Cool, but also kind of out of left field. And, you know, Hechicero is not like the biggest CMLL star, right? He's not the biggest guy, but he's a guy that North Americans adore. He's the Tomohiro Ishii of CMLL, where he's bigger everywhere else he goes than in his own hometown / country. You know, not that he's not over in Japan, Tomohiro Ishii is, but when he comes here, when he goes to the UK, it's just, you know, he's umpteen times bigger. I mean, look, I honestly don't know what to expect out of this. How is MJF going to handle Hechicero, who's, you know, he's a bit of a worker himself. You know, I don't know. Owen Hart Foundation 2024 tournament men's tournament, I should say, quarterfinal match. Bryan Danielson will be taking on Shingo Takagi. This is my most anticipated match of the entire show. This has the potential to be match of the night and just like eclipse everything. I mentioned it earlier, 14 years ago, Danielson. You remember when Danielson had been fired from WWE when he choked out Justin Roberts with a tie? Remember that? And they told him to hit the bricks. He went back, he hit the indies, and he did a Dragon Gate USA match against Shingo in 2010 at the Enter the Dragon show in Philadelphia. And this was the only time they've ever encountered each other since. So the bar is tremendous. Like, if you have not seen this match, I shared it in the MrWarrenHayes Show Discord. Come join us. Link is in the description. I share cool retro matches once in a while, like this one here. I was able to put it up there. This is an absolutely fantastic match. The one they had in 2010, absolutely tremendous. The bar is so incredibly high, and they are so much better and seasoned and smarter. Like, they're so good at what they do now. They're near untouchable. 14 years later, and this match is going to rule. I am excited. I can't wait to see it. And Danielson wins. I think Shingo's going to hit the bricks and go get ready for the G1. Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. I mean, fun match, but we've seen this. You know, this is kind of what I mean. Like I'm gonna enjoy this match. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see it, and they had some nice exchanges on Dynamite, you know, in the 8-man All-Star match. But we've seen this match. But these are two good wrestlers. Zack Sabre Jr. is a great wrestler. Orange Cassidy is very good. I think Zack wins. I think do you want a hot take? If Zack Sabre Jr. wins this match, he's winning the G1. How about that? Because I don't want to get off track here, but I think it is Zack Sabre Jr.'s G1 to win this year. I think it makes too much sense. And I think that if he let's revisit this. Let's make a note of this. If Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Orange Cassidy at Forbidden Door, I predict he wins the G1. AEW Women's World Championship. Toni Storm will be defending against Mina Shirakawa. This is another match that has the potential to be very good. Toni and Mina, stardom bred. Toni's fantastic. Mina's great. Like, there's just too much talent in this ring. The only thing that can keep this match from hitting the heights is the Mariah nonsense. If we have more lesbian love triangle going on, you know? If there's too much of that, it's going to distract from the match. And that is always the problem with Toni Storm matches since the Timeless gimmick started. How much shtick do we rely on before we actually get a super fun match? Because Toni's able. Toni is capable. She is one of the best wrestlers, best women in North America. Bar none. Hopefully, Mina and her little stardom vibes will be able to drag the best out of Toni Storm here. Hopefully. But keep your eyes peeled on this Mariah May stuff, right? AEW TNT ladder match. For now, we have Mark Briscoe, Konosuke Takeshita, Jack Perry, Dante Martin, and Lio Rush confirmed. I think we have one more entrant left. I think so, right? I don't think anyone's been announced. I don't even think there's a match for that's been announced unless for Dynamite. I don't think it's been announced unless it's happening as we're recording this. But you know, obviously I don't know because I'm not on. You know, I don't follow the Twitter stuff, but especially when I'm recording. So personally, look, I am thrilled to see Lio Rush in here, and if this is a make do for Lio Rush, and you know, Lio Rush is one of these guys where he is so talented and he has got so much to give. And I've been a Lio Rush cheerleader for years. I've been pushing for this guy for years. And if he can get out of his own way and put together whatever needs to be put together so he can stay in a fucking company. Excuse me, algorithm again. But if he can do that, that would be tremendous. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Then we have the match for the AEW TBS Championship and the New Japan Strong Women's Championship. Mercedes Moné versus Stephanie Vaquer. It's a winner-take-all match. We are getting a dual champion at the end of this. This is also another match that risks falling into greatness territory. I think Moné is going to end this match walking around with two titles. She is finally going to carry the title that was designed for her. She's going to walk around with that belt. And I think that's fine. And Stephanie Vaquer to me is really the story of the match here. Because I think she has something to prove. she wants to get to let me start over. Last year, when they had the strong women's tournament, was it last year? Was it the year before? I think it was last year, right? It was last year. When they had I think, or was it the year before? Forgive me in my poor appreciation for timelines. So listen, we've got Vaquer. When she wrestled there, most American fans had no idea who she was. She got into her knockout round match against Mercedes Moné and lost, right? She was straight out of the tournament on her first match. But that match woke up a lot of people to take notice. Like, who is she? And we've talked about it here. So the rub that she got from that Mercedes Moné match is still carrying today. That match made brand new Stephanie Vaquer fans. Now she's coming into this match in arguably the biggest audience, in front of the biggest audience that she's wrestled for in the United States. She's got cameras and attention all over her. She's coming in with something to prove. And she's probably losing, but I think she's in a position where she can lose up. She already lost up in the strong tournament. I think she can do it again, especially since she's wrestling Mercedes, which they clearly have great chemistry. They clearly do. If you base yourself on the tournament, I think this match has the potential to be great. I think this is going to be tremendous. I think I think she's going to lose. Vaquer is, but I think she's going to come out a winner nonetheless. I'm excited to see this match. Jon Moxley will be defending the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship against Tetsuya Naito. Of course, I think Naito's winning. I think that's the safe bet. Getting his win back from Moxley, ending the heartache with New Japan fans who just could not stand that an AEW guy had the title. Probably brings some peace also back to the locker room, maybe feeling over in Japan, maybe not feeling as much as that, not maybe to sort of help curb the feeling that New Japan is AEW's developmental arm, that it's the little brother in the relationship, all that stuff. I think we're on our way to that. I like their match at Windy City Riot, Mox and Naito, and I think they might have a better one in them, and I think this is the perfect time to do it. And like I said, Naito gets his win back, gets the belt back. We got a proper self-contained G1 with Tetsuya Naito, who will quite assuredly be back headlining the Tokyo Dome in January. All the question is against who at this point. I know he hit social media or whatever, or did an interview, and he said that he will, if he loses against Jon Moxley, he will give up his spot in the G1. And a lot of people went, ooh. But there's no way Tony Khan is letting Jon Moxley leave for the summer in 2024. Hell no. No. There's no way. Mox is absolutely dropping the title. I'm excited. This should be very good. And then the AEW World Title match, Swerve Strickland versus Will Ospreay. We already talked about this, but this should also be great. You see what I mean? I don't know how long I spent giving you discourse around how much I feel like Forbidden Door is not a good build and a bit of a letdown in that aspect. But then I run down the card. I'm like, Jesus Christ, on paper, this card is actually excellent. On paper, this should be, as the kids like to overuse, a banger. I'm excited for it. Well, listen. I'm excited for the matches, but the pay-per-view I'm not excited for. Does that make sense? Like, there's nothing that gets me excited for the pay-per-view, but I'm excited for the matches. Does that make sense? It does. It sounds like something a crazy person would say. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, next week on the podcast, of course, we're going to be reviewing Forbidden Door 2024 this Sunday. I'll be watching. I will be watching AEW. You're warned. Hey, so real quickly, because my God, I really do want to talk about Fantasticamania. So I'm going to go through this a little quickly, and I don't want to keep you all here forever either. The G1 Climax this year, 34. I already don't know. I already don't remember the number. I think it's 34. We're in the midst of the G1 play-in matches, right? If you recall, the field of 20 was announced last week, but only 18 participants were officially announced. 2 spots, one in each block, Block A, Block B, were left open and would be determined with a play-in, which would be fought between a bunch of pro wrestlers who would vie for these final spots. And this is going on in the New Japan Soul Tour that's happening right now. And we already have some results. We already have people who've been eliminated. And I am happy to report that the way that I was hoping it would turn out is turning out right now, where the schlubs, the sacks of turnips, who usually pollute a G1 are no longer there. We are clearly, erasing the fields from having nights off and instead putting people in there who are potentially hungry, have something to prove, younger guys. It's not done yet, but we're down that path because Callum Newman and Yoshihashi both advanced in the tournament, defeating Yujiro Takahashi and Chase Owens, respectively. Yoshihashi will wrestle Tomohiro Ishii in the semifinals. Tomohiro Ishii got a bye in the tournament. And Callum Newman will wrestle Kenta, who also got a bye. And then on the other side of the tournament, Oleg Boltin defeated Toru Yano in the tournament match for the show. This means that Yano's elimination, because of Yano's elimination, he will not be in the G1 for the first time since 2007. That's bonkers. So you see, we're getting rid of the old slippers, the old shoes. No nights off. No nights off with Yujiro. No nights off with Yano. So Boltin moves on to wrestle Hiroshi Tanahashi, who received a first round bye. And then TJP defeated Satoshi Kojima, MLW champion Satoshi Kojima. In the second tournament this weekend, he will wrestle Taichi, who was the recipient of a bye, in the semifinals. And then if I'm not mistaken, not if I'm not mistaken, then there will be finals for both of these brackets, and then they will be added to their respective blocks. So what's really interesting here, right, is that we have Callum Newman, who, if you had been paying attention, if you had been listening to it, I mentioned it here on the show as well, commentary was putting over the fact that, Newman's packing on the pounds, and I was scratching my beard. I was going, hey, wait a minute, does this mean packing on the pounds? Is this code for saying that he's graduating to the heavyweights and he's going to be in the G1? Yes, well, there's a very good chance he's wrestling for it. TJP is in there as well. So 2 guys that are graduating into the heavyweights. But Newman specifically, they had him win against Tetsuya Naito. No, not win, excuse me. They had him at a one-on-one match with Tetsuya Naito. And he came up short. But these are signs that the booking is getting behind him. Like, Gedo really likes him and is ready to give him a chance. So I would not be surprised in the least if he moves forward here. I think it would stink if I think he's gonna defeat Kenta, and ultimately the toss-up is going to be between Yoshihashi and Callum Newman moving forward, I believe. I know we all love ourselves some Tom Ish. We all love Tommy Ish, right? He's tremendous. There's a lot of reasons to love him, but holy smokes, he's been up the he's getting up there in age. I don't know why Dad had so much trouble. I'm getting up there in age too. He's getting up there in age, and maybe his body just can't handle a G1. Maybe you want to save the Tomohiro Ishii big clobbering matches for specific moments and the big grueling tour of the summer. Maybe it's not for him anymore, which is fair. Kenta, who cares? I don't want Kenta in the tournament. And Yoshihashi, well, see, I think Yoshihashi is a very solid product. He's an underdog that the audience really loves. If he makes it to the tournament, I would not be mad. I think in these G1s, he always shines and he helps his opponents shine. I think he's a very good asset in a G1. But do you go with the story of the young upstart here trying to make a spot? Because here's the thing, like I said last week, the thing with Callum Newman in block action is that this is a guy who can eat all the L's without an issue, but he is going to work his ass off in every match because he knows that he has something to prove. He's got a spot to make for himself in this company, and he's going to work. Not that Yoshihashi wouldn't work, but Newman has a little something more because he really has something to prove. And I kind of feel the same way with Bolton. Although you can make an argument that maybe not quite now for Bolton. But I wouldn't have a problem with them moving forward into the block. But I think there's a stronger argument to say, no, let's put Taichi in there than Bolton. I love Oleg Bolton. I think he's got something that a lot of people on the card don't have, but he's still running around in his black boots and his black trunks. And he's in these great trios matches where he always shines. He ends up doing most of the work, paired up or trioed up with Toru Yano and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Bolton, he'd be another guy like Newman. He can take all the L's in the tournament. That won't be a problem. But man, do we really not want Taichi in this? Do we really not want Taichi in a G1? God damn. Because look, you're asking me, Hiroshi Tanahashi doesn't move forward. I don't think this is the final Hiroshi Tanahashi match or G1. I don't think this is it. I think he can come back next year. I think this year, if they're focused on building the new guys, giving some new opportunities for new people, new faces, new people to rise above the cream right now. The cream doesn't just rise to the top, it rises above. Tanahashi has to be removed from the equation. And I don't think they're going to sell less tickets. I don't think they're going to sell more tickets at this point. And no, I don't think TJP's moving forward, for what it's worth. So there you go. So these semifinals are happening this weekend. They are happening on July 3rd at Corkin Hall. So let's go. Next week, we're gonna sit back. We're gonna settle back in, and we're gonna have an even better understanding of what the play-in, what the G1 Climax is gonna look like. So I'm excited to go down that route with y'all. Very excited to see how that's gonna happen. And now we're gonna wrap everything up for today's podcast by reviewing CMLL New Japan presents Fantasticamania Mexico 2024, which happened on June 21st, 2024 at Arena Mexico. And look, this was a great wrestling show. Period. Great top to bottom action. Fantastic wrestling. Hot crowd. And an amazing moment on top of that. A special moment, because they were also celebrating in this Fantasticamania, they were also celebrating the 20th year anniversary of Mystico's wrestling career. And they had a tremendous moment for him that is exactly what you want in pro wrestling, and it ruled. And it absolutely ruled. And it wasn't overproduced. It wasn't overdone. It was simple, effective, and sincere. You know, it started and they had, there were video packages earlier in the evening where they were, Mystico was on tour doing things. It was, he went to a cathedral, or a basilica. I don't know exactly, but there was a religious ceremony. I don't know the details. I don't quite understand why they did that, but it seems significant. They had a whole video package on that. And then for the main event, they had Mysticos appearing in different parts of Arena Mexico with the spotlight on it. And the thing that was really funny is that every Mystico that appeared with the Undertaker's gong. So, it was legitimately the Undertaker's gong. And I froze. I was like, what? It's like, hey, what? But it was fine. It just, they could have used any other sound, but they decided to use the Undertaker's gong. Anyway. And he came out to Me Muero by a band called La Quinta Estación, a song that was recorded 15 years ago or so. And Mystico was in that, was in the music video. And it's a fairly well-known song in Mexico. And they played it and everyone sang along. I think it used to be, don't quote me on this, I think it used to be Mystico's I think he's used it as his theme song in the past, and they sort of brought it back. And I saw even TikToks. Yes, I went on TikTok. Saw TikToks of people in Arena Mexico filming it, people losing their shit because this song played, and everyone in Arena Mexico was singing it. And what really sucked is that the audio mix, when you were watching it live, was horrible. You could not hear the audience sing, but CMLL re-uploaded the entrance with everything properly mixed in, and you could hear the audience just singing along to the entire song. Mystico coming out in the middle. You cannot understate how big this guy is. We make jokes about Mystico the Draw and so on and so forth, but it is legitimate. It is true. People love this man. He truly, sincerely, he's huge. They even showed footage of Gabriel Pereira, or Gabriel Pereira, soccer player anyway, football player in 2006, who put on Mystico's mask after scoring a goal as a celebration. Which is, tremendous, just to show like how Mystico had crossed over into public consciousness. Look, the whole thing was just a superstar moment. And he being Mystico, had this whole official moment with dignitaries, like Salazar was there, along with the Carontes and Astro Boy Jr., to whom he's all related to. And I think he's related to Salazar too. And it was just a tremendous moment. Then after that, they introduced Hiromu Takahashi, which was hilarious. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, this ended the show. This was before the main event. And it capped off such a wonderful evening of pro wrestling, of lucha libre, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I think Tony Khan is overthinking Forbidden Door. I think he's overthinking it. Just give us fun matches. Like, you can create matches with stories and builds. I think that's important. But also cool matches and a great atmosphere, a party atmosphere. This felt like a celebration of wrestling. This is kind of what it felt like. And I was like, this is so cool. I'm so glad that I'm watching this. It happens. It's the kind of thing that makes you happy to be a wrestling fan, because you're sitting there and looking at this and I'm like, I am glad I'm watching this. I'm glad I decided to put this on my TV and not anything else, not watch another episode of The Boys or Three Body Problem, or some YouTube drama. I'm so glad I'm watching this. Sustained, just a great evening of pro wrestling. Cyclops is better than Wolverine. Nice to see. A long time no see, by the way. Thanks for being here. But this is a show that I cannot recommend enough for all wrestling fans. It was tremendous. Listen, since we were talking about the main event, might as well talk about it right now, right? Where Mystico defeated Hiromu Takahashi. The crowd was so hot for this. Like, they were alive. The crowd was so good for the entire match, for the entire show, excuse me. But this Mystico moment was just outstanding. Anyway, when the match starts, after the celebration, after the huge cheers, the nostalgic theme song playing and everyone singing along, then Hiromu Takahashi comes out. And I'm like, poor Hiromu. And I'm thinking to myself, he has to play the heel here. And guess what he did? He wrestled a heel a good one too, for the entirety of the match. Takes control and is, he's working body parts, and he's working at Mystico's mask too, because boo. Mystico fights back, lands a tornillo, and Takahashi with a falcon arrow and tries to tear the mask off again. He does the seated senton to the floor. Spanish fly by Mystico. Springboards by Mystico follow. But there's a low blow by Hiromu while the ref is distracted. Covers, but Mystico kicks out. Some near falls. Super close win. Super close. 3 counts by Hiromu on Mystico. But Mystico wins with La Mystica, right? Could it have gone any other way? Yes. But sure. They could have been real fucking bold and decide to have Hiromu Takahashi win, and then he becomes the worst person in Japan. Like, he becomes banned from Mexico. Well, not officially, but you know what I mean. Like, he couldn't walk into the street without without security walking along with them. But no, they went the safe route, and that's fine. You give the people what they want. They wanted Mystico to win with La Mystica, and they got it, and it's fine. And Hiromu wins, and it's all good. And we get the happy ending, and Mystico must pose, and it honestly was a great finish for a great evening of pro wrestling. Hiromu winning would have been maybe more interesting. But then again, like, how do you stretch that out? Hiromu's going to be in Japan. Like, what? Well, obviously he's going to stick around for Forbidden Door, but then he's going to go back to Japan. How are you going to make that work? Do you want to do these crossover events? Whatever. Maybe Hiromu's not the guy either to do this with. It was a good match. I give it 3 3/4 stars. Very good match. If we go back to the top of the card, started off with Futuro and Maxstar and Vegas defeating the Carante, the Carante Doctors 1 and 2. Dr. Carante 1, Dr. Carante 2, and Astro Boy Jr. This was a good opener. I thought it was a good opener. Started off a little rough, but got on track. And once it got on track, I thought it was a very good, well-worked, energetic opener. Futuro got the win. I think he's tremendous. I'm loving his work more and more. He's another young guy who's gonna be starting to turn some heads. He's tremendous. Good opener. Like, straight off the bat, I'm like, okay, I'm into it. This is great. I gave this 3 1/4 star. Good little opener. Byron Cutler. Nice to see you. As opposed to, what's the other Cutler's name? Brandon Cutler? Not the same. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the chat. Then we had my least favorite match of the night, where Magnus and Rugido defeated Bad Dude Tito and Che Cabrera. This was, yeah, it was fine. Don't get me wrong. Fine little match, but just lacked a little something. It's your typical 2 out of 3 falls match where the work is decent, but there's nothing really else to it. The Technicos get a double pin on Tito and Cabrera for the win. Bad Dude Tito got a ton of heat at the start of this match. Like, a ton of heat. It was a tremendous affair. I thought it was fine. 2 3/4 stars for this one. And again, it's not even like a terrible match. It's just like a match that happened. Let's move on. Then we had Stephanie Vaquer successfully retaining the New Japan Strong Women's Championship against La Catalina. There's this good stretch here where Vaquer is brutalizing the La Catalina, and it's absolutely fantastic. Catalina mounts her comeback, gets a near fall on a flying crossbody, and the crowd goes nuts. They are into this match. Catalina lands a Michinoku driver, can't get the job done. Vaquer lands the corner knees, and but it can't. She can't put Catalina away. Catalina strikes back, but Vaquer eventually lands the powerbomb onto the knees thing and gets the win. I thought this match was great. I thought it was tremendous. Unquestionably, I think I wrote probably in my notes, but probably the best I've ever seen La Catalina. This was tremendous. And on top of that, the best match she put on, in my opinion, and it was revealed the next day, she had surgery. She revealed this on, Instagram, Twitter, that she had a surgery the very next day on the Saturday morning to get rid of a painful cyst that was depending, I'm not sure what the translation was, and I even checked Lucha Blog to see if and he wasn't quite sure about the translation either, but it was either assist on her ovary or assist the size of an ovary. But either way, she was in pain, and she was taking bumps and eating shit and everything. She seemed to sell a little more. Maybe, yeah, it seemed really painful, and she's doing these cross bodies, and it was just tremendous. What a match. Vaquer is awesome. She's so good. And after the match, Mercedes Moné came out. It was rumored that she'd be there, and she did show up as a surprise. She was unannounced. And she and Vaquer jaw-jack. They get into a physical confrontation. Setting up Forbidden Door, of course. Well done, well played. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Moné ends up wrestling in Arena Mexico sooner than later. I would not be surprised in the least. I really like this match. 3 3/4 stars, which is the story of the night, really. Rocky Romero and Taiji Ishimori defeated Mascara Dorada and Templario. This was fast-paced, smartly done, great rudo work by Romero, who is he's phenomenal. In CMLL, he is untouchable. He is so good at what he does. Taiji Ishimori was there, hanging for the... Like, if you're a New Japan purist, you're kind of like, why is this Chaos guy working with a Bullet Club guy, you know? But if you're able to just like push that away, you will enjoy this match as much as I did. I thought this was really dope, but there was a really weird 3 count. That's how the referee counted a full 3, and you could see Rocky talking to the ref on the mat, but you know the ref sort of like shoot him out of the ring like they usually do, and it's like, no, it's not a 3, and it wasn't it wasn't an appropriate 3. Like there was clearly a fuck up there. The Technicos in this match, Templario and Dorada, have this incredible segment that ends with a double team frog splash and standing shooting star press. Is great stuff. And Taiji Ishimori pulls off Templario's mask while the ref is distracted. Templario does this, of course, because removing a mask in Lucha Libre or at least in CMLL, is an automatic disqualification. I don't know if you knew this. So, but the ref doesn't see it, counts to 3. That was pretty awesome. That really was pretty awesome. And then we had Michael Oku and Zack Sabre Jr. defeating... before that, we had a pre-tape of Kyle Fletcher challenging Atlantis Jr. For a match for the Ring of Honor TV title in Arena Mexico. And that just happens is going to be the main event of this Friday's show, of this Friday's Arena Mexico show. It's fucking great. I'm so excited. Atlantis Jr., if you're not familiar with his work, you should be. He's a young guy who's just he's gonna make you a believer. How about that? He's gonna turn you into a believer. It's just tremendous. And then we got Michael Oku and Zack Sabre Jr. defeating Averno and Volador Jr. This was another good match, and Zack Sabre Jr. is tying people into knots, and Oku looked very good here. I thought he looked great here, representing Rev Pro, the British champion. And at some point in the match, where everything was going well and smoothly, at some point, Volador accidentally cracks Averno with a super kick, if I'm not mistaken. And Averno just like, he gets pissed off for the rest of the match. Like, he's like, you son of a bitch. And for the rest of the match, all he wants to do is kick his own partner's ass. That's all he wants to do, is just kick his ass. And he's, Volador Jr. is like covering, he's rolling up, the British guys, putting them into pinning combinations. And Averno just comes, kicks Volador right in the face and breaks up the pin. You're like, okay, he just doesn't care anymore. So, we get a frog splash. Well, we get actually for the finish. Zack Sabre Jr. locks in a Euro clutch, and Oku does a frog splash for the win. And it's and after the match, Volador and Averno jawjack at each other. They're not happy with each other. This is setting something up. Speculation is that it might lead to a hair versus hair match, probably for the anniversary show, which is coming up, which is one of the biggest shows of the year for CMLL. So we might get that, a good old hair versus hair match. But again, the work in this match was tremendous. 3.5 stars, I think I gave this. Just a fantastic show with really good pro wrestling. Maybe it's falling short of, match of the year contenders, and, I did no 4 stars, nothing that got me up until, but when you're so consistent from top to bottom on your show, and this was like, what, 5 matches? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches? Like this. And it felt like a great wrestling show, and it was special. This was a great show. This was a great, great, great show. Highly recommend you watch the whole thing. It's just like, it's a nifty little 3 hours. Tightly packed. You get a snack and a drink, and the next thing you know, it's done. You're like, man, this felt great. I love the show. I can't put it over enough. I love this show. CMLL. Doing the thing. And I'm about to do the thing too, which is wrap up this edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. I've talked enough. We've gone over things more than enough. It's time to send y'all home. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on this adventure this week. I appreciate it tremendously. If you're watching on YouTube right now, leave a like or consider subscribing as well if this is the first time you're here. There's a lot more of this stuff to come, so I would love to have you around and become a regular. Come and join us in the live chat if you can, because we record live every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, so we'd love to have you here. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application, 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 5-star ratings on Spotify would be tremendous, and I'd be very, very appreciative. If you can't get enough of me, I packaged together 6 hours of wrestling reviews, kind of like what I just did. If you just want to turn that on in the background for some noise, or maybe allow me to join you to send you to sleep, you can find that on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. It's right there. And I do this for you. So you can check that out. Otherwise, look, I'll be back on Thursday for the Dynamite review, of course, for the Go Home show for Forbidden Door. We'll be back on Tuesday to review Forbidden Door, and there will probably be more nutsoid things happening in the world of pro wrestling. So until then, have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.